Good morning. It's Wednesday. It's time for our couples devotional. Today, the title of our devotional is What? Submit? We're going to look at Ephesians chapter 5 and continue on where we left off. Last few weeks, we've been in Ephesians 5 talking about following the example of Christ and loving, and we've talked about sexual purity. We've talked about darkness and light and living for God, and you can go back and listen to those on the previous Wednesdays, but we're finally ready to get to instructions for Christian households. And Paul says this, he says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then he gets very specific in verse 22. He said, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. Now, this is a little bit tricky. Some people don't like this verse. Some people don't like this idea in our day and age. And so I'm going to let my wife deal with this one.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, I know this is a complicated subject, so I thought the best thing to do is for me to just get personal about how this looks in my marriage to Brian. First thing I want to say is I'm not afraid to submit to him. I recognize that's not popular in our culture, but to me, when the Bible has something to say as a command, which it does in Ephesians, I need to take that seriously and I need to look at that and apply that in my life. So I want you guys to know that. I consider myself to be a strong woman. I think I can think for myself. I'm not afraid to express my opinion, and I do that freely in my marriage. But I want you guys to know that I'm comfortable with this idea, and hopefully as we talk about it practically in my marriage, maybe you'll understand that more. The main thing I want to say is that Brian and I are partners, definitely. I don't want anyone to misunderstand that submission means that Brian's the boss and I'm just kind of sitting at his feet waiting for him to tell me what to do. We make decisions together, and in fact, in our household, I make most of the decisions as it pertains to the kids, to the things we buy, to the things I do in the home. The day-to-day stuff really falls under my jurisdiction. As this looks, though, in the bigger decisions of life, we've made decisions about buying a new home, where I came to Brian a few years ago and said, I just don't feel like where we live now is meeting the needs of our kids. And we talked about it, and I trusted Brian then to make decisions of what we could afford and the kind of loan that we would get, all of those things. We looked at buying a new car at one point, and Brian really felt strongly about maybe we should do the used option. And at the end of the day, I expressed my opinion, he expressed his, and I recognized that I needed to submit to him and to the decision that he would make because I trust that he can lead our family and lead well. At the end of the day, really for me, submission is about respect. I respect Brian's role. I look for my job is to build him up and to encourage him to be the best he can be in that role of head of our home.
Now, we'll talk next week about what this means for husbands and what spiritual leadership means, that it's a responsibility, it's not a privilege. But for now, I just encourage you to hit pause and pray for some of these needs in your own life and at Alpine Church in general.